Hey, Rich, what's up?
Hey, a couple months ago, you told me something crazy about fast eating big, slow, smosh, doing something. What was that?
Oh, yeah. It's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow.
Sweet, that's it. I know just the guy to help us. Can you meet me at the gate? I'm Rich Levene, and this is Meet Me at the Gate, where we're not just talking theory, we're tackling real world problems head on, driving solutions that supercharge productivity and team dynamics. Every episode is a journey towards improvement, empowering you, the manager, to lead with innovation and confidence. Join us to transform everyday roadblocks into highways for success. So let's talk processes and stuff. Kirk is obviously an expert. The more I'm around him, the more I'm learning. Mind blown, fascinating. I found somebody that can level up with me on my nerd level. I mean, it's like off the charts. Here's what I've learned from Kirk. Here's what I've learned in my career. Like I did a lot of processes before. Processes are great. They get you farther, but they don't last forever. Leadership gets you a long ways, but doesn't get you there forever because you got to have both of them. And then I meet my match, right? I find somebody that understands processes way better than I do. We're going from, we're drawing this out right here. See this? There's 1.7, 0.2. How do we get cars through this process and over here on this flow chart? So here's our expert, Kirk Zauderer. What do you see when you walk into an auction? I mean, talk to us about process.
Yeah, so I think going into a site, I think a lot of processes actually start with the people. So that's the thing, like coming into a site, one thing I always love to do is like you can look and you can understand kind of how things are flowing, and that's an important part of just like breaking out the flow of how a vehicle or whatever the widget is through the box that you're looking at. A lot of times you got to understand the people impact to the process, right? Of why do we have certain people in certain roles? And a lot of times the reason you start batching processes versus a single piece flow in a process type thing. What occurs is because you have a person that's doing multiple things, and three of the things they're doing they probably shouldn't be really doing. So one of the discussions actually had with a team today was that as opposed to looking at it like what job should I be doing, taking the people away from the process and then looking at it based on the car. So the vehicle that's moving through the workflow, the activities that we need to do to a car is the same at every auction. It's not the different. You have to write a CR. You've got to detail the car. You've got to do a mechanical inspection or whatever. But where in the process should you be doing it and who should be doing it? So that the goal is to get maximum speed and flow out of it with at least defects or quality points. So what I do a lot of times, I'll go through and start just talking to people, understanding like, all right, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? But then matching it back to the ideal process that a car should go through. And then once you start looking through that lens, you start seeing sort of like the waste in the system, which could be like wasted motion, you're overproducing. So examples of that are, a vehicle goes out, is in an area and the line's too long. So then you have like a CR rider or something that may have to porter the vehicle. Well, you don't want a CR rider portering a car. You want a CR rider just riding a CR on a car. Or you might have a row that's too long. So they work on the beginning part of the row and then it's 20 deep. So then you've got to porter 10 cars up. So you're constantly just shifting vehicles. Well, that's wasted motion, right? That you're doing. Or maybe in a course of a day, you overproduce the amount of vehicles out of an area that clogs up another step of the process. So a big part of it is once you understand the ideal flow of a car and you understand what are the resources they need to do it, you start looking at it and setting up the structure of the flow of a car, right? So that's from a process standpoint, that's kind of the first two things that I look at, right? Is what's the ideal flow and who are the people doing the process steps.
So on that waste thing, let's talk about it for a second. So you've been helping a team that's doing heavy duty equipment and cars, and they got a mess going on.
Yep.
And before you started helping them, they were at a little over 12 days from check-in to the time the CR was completed. And that was everything. That's in-ops, tows, no keys, heavy duty equipment, all this different stuff. And in less than 45 days, cycle time has been dropped down to a little over 1.5. So what have we that 6 times the process?
Yeah.
Wait, whoa. Sorry. You just went from 12 days to a day and a half. Is that what I just heard?
Yes. Yeah. Amazing, right? And we're out here going like this. But then Kirk says, well, look, the ideal goal is we can get this down. I've done it with other auctions. So we can get this other auction down to 0.2 because other people are doing it. Like 0.2 for a day. So that's, I don't know, what is that, a couple hours? But you started talking to him and listened to him about the waste. Okay, you check in a car. A guy gets in, starts it, and then he shuts it off for whatever reason. Well, it's got a bad battery. Now you got to jump it. Okay, now there's 15 more minutes of wasted time. Okay, then the guy CRs it. Well, then he takes it and drops it off and shuts it off. And then somebody else is going to come along and test drive it. Well, now guess what he's got to do? He's got to jump it again. So how do you build? I mean, what do you tell auction? How do you build and say, like, look, stop jumping that same car 3 times?
The function of every job should be consistent in what we're doing, trying to remove the variability in the process. So one of the key things, like the analogies I use, is that there's certain people that are like the doctor. So when you go to a doctor's office, the doctor doesn't greet you at the door. The doctor does not take your intake form. The doctor does not take you back to the patient room. The doctor doesn't come in and take your vitals. So once you understand, the doctor comes in and does the final review with the patient or whatever that you're doing. So when you look at it, like your CR writer is like your doctor. Your mechanic is like a doctor. I want them turning wrenches. I don't want them moving cars, portering around or whatever. So once you start aligning the process, then it starts changing the way that you're thinking that, well, why would I allow them to jump the car or CR? You start setting rules up in a sense around the system that you don't let the doctor, in a sense, do certain activities because you want to maximize their time. So once you start understanding that's where it gets back to the people. What are the key roles within your workflow that you've got to maintain? That I don't want them spending an hour of their day jumping off a car or portering a car. I want them to spend that hour CRing vehicles. And that's where you get the extra capacity back. Part of it, the extra capacity back in the system. The other thing is that operating, you also don't want to move a car in extra time. You don't need to be moving it. So when a car goes into an area and you've got like a row of 5 cars, that car drops, you could stock it in right there. You could CR it right there. You could sign off the car right there. And you could have a mechanic pick the car up from right there and take it out. The car never moved. Most locations, what happens is they'll stock it in one area and then they'll move it to an area where they CR it. And then they'll move it to another area where they have to sign it off. And then they move it to another area where every one of these movements is actually taking up space within your process. So that car now, that one vehicle that sat in one physical parking spot, now took up 4 additional parking spots, which means the overall capacity on your property is you're limiting the amount of space that you have. So that's where a lot of people say, like, I need more space. Really, you don't need more space. You need more flow through your facility. Once you pick up that flow and that speed, that's where all of a sudden you start picking up space and capacity, whether physical space or time space within the system that you didn't even realize that you had.
So you take your lot, and now by doing this process, you eliminate. So you got 4 spots, you eliminate 3 of them. You just saved 75% of your lot.
Right.
Because you're saving that spot for each one. Okay, if 20 cars go through the mechanic shop, well, I need 20 spots. Well, not necessarily. You know, if 20 cars get dropped in at check-in, that's really the only place you need 20 spots. Because then if everything starts flowing, this is what I've learned from Kirk, it starts flowing through and it hits all the stuff. One car just fills in and backfills, and it just keeps going. And then bam, we got this beautiful process and you've saved a ton of space.
Like, I've listened to you talk, and of course I'm at auctions picking cars up, dropping cars off, so I kind of know what you're talking about. But it would also seem like there's a big reduction in liability for that one vehicle. Because I think, if I'm right, accidents happen on the lot with auction employees because they're moving cars around all the time.
Absolutely, bingo. So there's another built-in savings I didn't even consider.
Well, yeah, huge. Yeah, it's a big savings. And just like Kurt's talking about, now you're saving people time, hours, by being able to put one car there. I mean, I've got a visual in my head of a particular auction. I'm like, I totally get what you're saying, Kurt.
The other value too is that the more you can condense processes into a smaller space, it's easier to actually manage. So a lot of times it's like, if you have more room or more space, you're going to fill that area. But within that area, then it's like, I need to have someone managing that area or supervising this or go checking on that or looking. But if you can condense things into smaller spots, more controlled, and you can actually even level load resources better. So that's one thing, like having the advantage of going out to more like independents and, in a sense, I won't say like smaller, but volume wise, the importance of being able to have resources that can do more than one job. You have a primary job, but then you've also got like a secondary job. So if I knock this out, I immediately know I can move to something else. And there's huge value in being able to cross utilize people. But the key is knowing when to make that decision to move a person to the next spot. But if I've got to move that, now that process is on the other side of the lot, to move that person to the other side, it might not be, might be able to do it. But if it's literally the next lane over, then they can just move 5 feet over, knock this out, and you just keep rocking and rolling.
Well, this kind of slides into my world, which is cognosis, lot vision, which is obviously an additional expense for an auction to find a car. But if I remember right, when I first learned about cognosis, the big pitch from cognosis to the auction, the big sales pitch is how many guys do you have out there spending 5 hours a day trying to find one car? By what Kirk's talking about, I'm not saying you got to get rid of cognosis, but it seems like you'd be able to find a car in one particular area a lot quicker than you would looking in 20, 30 acres of cars, right?
A term that I came up with talking with Kirk today, if anybody's read the book Extreme Ownership, and they talk about surrounding the enemy and how you have to have them under control. So when you go into battle, you know what you got. Well, when an enemy gets loose, the term they call it is a squirter. Today, we had a car that got out and we're like, hey, we had a car come through and it missed the whole process. I'm like, that's a squirter. But if you eliminate those and you take those defects out of the process, like you said, you run it through a funnel and you've got control, right? And now you've got a better process. And so a lot of people are going to say, Rich, you're the leadership guy. Now you're talking control. You don't like command and control. Well, here's what I've learned. Leadership is about how you treat people. Management is about processes, and you do need some control in there. So now if we give people the framework, we create the discipline, we tell them what the expectation is and the vision, and provide clarity. There's the big word of the week, clarity. This is what we're trying to do. And now you get everybody bought in and they all start working and they start seeing the process and the feedback you get from the team. Wow, we're moving this many cars. We got it down. And we go back to that 1.7 versus 12.5. You know what? And now they're like, wow, if we can take out 6 times the process, what happens? How much more can we take out of it? How do we get better? And it's changed the language that people are using from, I'm just here to take pictures. I'm just here to check in cars. I'm just here to write cars, to how can I do my job better? And if they ask that question, that goes back to us trying to make auctions great again, become the world's most trusted auto auction. And now we've got something.
Yep.
That takes leadership, but that leadership alone is not enough without Kirk's processes.
A key thing is that the processes that you're setting up need to be standardized and consistent, like with what you're saying. If you're writing CRs in a different place every time, it could be outside, it could be inside, it could be wherever. You're adding variability into that process. So the first really critical thing is that you want the consistency in what you're doing. Once you get that, you're going to pick up massive efficiency just through the consistency in what you're doing. But then what you're talking about is, say you're going to find vehicles, the squirters, or like I call them, it's like cows getting out of the corral or whatever. The cow got out of the corral, the squirter got out or whatever. In every vehicle, like we're all human, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up things, whatever. But the important thing is that not that we fix it, we understand why it happened and we collect the data. So I look at every vehicle as like a data point. It's going through a process. It's either going through correctly or it did not go through correctly. If it didn't go through correctly, if we have the right toll gate steps in the process to collect the data for why, then you start Paretoing the 80-20 rule. Why did it go wrong? And then you start fixing, that's how you keep gaining that improvement. So a car got out and now the team's looking at it and saying, okay, let's root cause why this happened so it doesn't happen again. And then you start closing all the corrals so the cow can't get out. And then the cow can only go through one gate. And that's the gate you want to go through every single time. And you keep buttoning it down. And that's what you get. Not only the speed, but the quality goes through the roof for every client is what you're going to see.
I was just curious when you guys were talking back and forth about your team and going, hey, we're going to go from 12. And I'm sure they probably rolled their eyes like you're crazy. And now they're doing it. But was there any kind of incentive, internal incentive or program, or did you do anything special, guys?
No, it was just like, hey, here's the vision, here's the goal. We want to become part of the world's most trusted auto auction. Actually, world's most trusted auction. How do we do that? Let's go back to what you and I talked about in another podcast on writing CRs a long time ago. CAT, consistency, accuracy, transparency. Now with this process, he's helping me naturally, and I didn't even explain CAT to him. By this process adds consistency. And then we're going through and we're looking at the data for what he calls the Pareto effect, that 20% deviation. That's your accuracy. How do you get your accuracy? Then the last one's transparency. If we're taking the information from check-in all the way through and then putting it on a CR and telling our customers, now you got transparency. Dealers are going to want to buy cars here. So by the process, we've built in transparency. We're building in trust.
This is interesting because we're sliding right into that breakout session I was telling you about with ACV Mannheim and Copart and the NAAA moderator. We started talking about arbitration and the transparency. Doug, it was Doug Hadigan with ACV. He was talking about guys, because as a seller, who wants this kind of transparency? That was basically what he said. As a seller, who wants this ACV camera all up in that car? With the smell, ACV has the smell box too. Have you heard about this? He puts it on the dash and somehow it smells what the inside of the car smells like, and somehow it can tell you. But either way, it doesn't matter. They're obviously talking about tech and a lot of online buying conversation. But my point in this was, as a seller, I think they're getting ready to experience some pretty amazing challenges. Just listening to Rich talk, and Rich and I talk, once a week on his drive home or something. We keep talking about this, and I don't think I've asked you, Rich, but how does the seller react to this?
On what? Given more information?
The seller's got a car that maybe he doesn't want everybody to know about that problem. And here you are digging through it with your CR and your pictures and doing all this great fancy stuff in a day. And he's thinking, man, I'm not sure I want all that action.
We've had both examples where it's worked out well, and we've had them where they pushed back. Where it works out well is like, why would I want to hide something or ruin my reputation on my future sales with a car by not being honest and straightforward with them? So that's one seller's. I had another seller that's like, look, I just want to sell my car's red light and I don't want them to know that. Here's what that created on the back end of it for me was I had buyers calling in pissed off. They knew that there was stuff wrong with them. They knew they were hiding behind the red light. And it ended up being, I had to go to them and say, look, you can't sell a car anymore here because this is the process. This is what we're building. This is the expectations people have. And I'm sorry, but this is a case where you're going to do it my way. Sounds like I got an ego, but we're so confident in the process that we're doing by checking it in, doing a test drive, writing a CR, taking images, and having all that done in less than 1.7 days. That includes all the in-ops and all the heavy equipment. So in reality, if a dealer's out there wants to give us a car, we're doing this in less than a half a day already. Now we've got a perfect picture of your car. And now guess what? That opens up opportunities for me to do other things that we'll save for a later date.
Online sales?
I don't know.
Well, that topic came up big. So for example, Brian, sorry, I don't know if we want to hear this story, but
We want to hear it.
So his stat was that everybody dropped the mic on was he's 70% online buyers, 30% in-lane buyers. His average online car that's purchased, average miles, I believe, don't hold me to this one, but I think it was 600 miles. I heard anywhere between 500 and 700 is maybe the national average, but this Vegas, Brian Mannheim, he's saying 70% are bought online, and of those 70%, they go at least 500 miles.
Wow. That is a big stat. So here's what I can say from a smaller sale. So that's a bigger sale. I know which one he's at. Obviously, I'm in a big market in Houston, but we're a small site. The number of online bidders or people that come in is about 25 to 30% higher than the number of people that actually come in. So I have more people online than I do in lane. Now, on the other side of that, though, I sell more cars to in-lane buyers than I do online. But as we've started building out this process and we're cutting our days and we got better CRs, we got better images, guess which number's slowly climbing up? That's that online sales. I'm starting to build up trust. People are going and looking at our pipeline before and going, wow, that car looks different. Wow, that's a cool car. And we're giving them the information, which now I can go back to the guy and say, hey, you don't want a CR, you don't want images, you don't want that. You've just cut out X number of buyers, which is more than are going to be in lane right now from the sale. Is that what you want? And the answer is usually no. They want top money, right?
Yeah. More eyes, more money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so this is interesting because I think I feel like sometimes I live in a sheltered life where it's real people at real auctions buying cars, and you don't see a lot of this online stuff. But sitting there listening to these guys talk on stage, then he starts talking. Doug starts talking about your CR report. He's like, "Man, I get a call every day, at least twice, where somebody wants to arbitrate a car." So he's like, "All right, sit down." Pulls it up. Here's the pictures of the car, and he's like, "If you just, we've got this technology now. You can do this, and you can see there's the problem that you're trying to arbitrate. What are you doing?" Right. So the encouragement they were trying to spin everything encouraging, which is good and nice, and I think right. Which was as you're sourcing inventory, if you're finding that it's harder to source what you might call local inventory, because Brian put out another stat that I thought was crazy. I mean, I was like, duh, yeah. He's like, you can get to a Mannheim in 150 miles pretty much no matter where you're at. He's like, if you can't source cars locally, that may be 150 miles, you might have to start looking out. If you're going to start looking out, here's some tips to use, to make it a better experience for you. And then they started throwing out those stats about the miles and stuff. So I was actually pretty blown away because I thought that's pretty interesting information, the whole online. There was, I feel like for me in my world, there was a lot of pushback because that really started pumping heavy in 2020, right? Buy online, don't go to the auction.
Yeah. Right before COVID. And then COVID hit and they thought that was the catalyst. Like, hey, here we are, home run.
Yeah. So, I mean, it felt kind of like it might be more of an organic, more of a natural go online and buy cars versus, well, sorry, we've got a pandemic. You can't go buy online. And, you talk, of course, I'm talking to a lot of dealers and just asking a lot of questions, but the guys seem to be more comfortable with it, the online purchase.
I've heard stories now where guys have like 6, 8 screens in front of them. They got auctions all over the country going. And there's some people that are doing it. So I kind of compare that to like a day trader, right? Day traders have learned how to start flipping stocks really fast. You still have the guy that wants to walk down and go talk to his stockbroker and sit and talk between him and the desk. And he's showing him charts and what he can do long-term and all this. I don't think we're ever going to get away from you're going to get away from physical. And I don't think you're ever going to get to 100% digital. And there's one common denominator that makes the world go round. And regardless of how much technology advances, that's the human being. Without humans, we're doomed.
Well, so tying this back into your processes, Kirk, obviously pictures are important. And obviously the consistency of the picture, the guy that's taking the pictures. I mean, this sounds like the same idea as the CR writer. Does the CR writer responsible for the photos?
Not here, not with our team.
I mean, your original damage photos. So, I mean, you take obviously they're writing a CR, so they've got to take the damage photos on the car, but the glamour photos and the post recon photos, right? Those are separate.
Separate, but still same location, creating that consistency for that photo taker. He knows he's going there and he's going to take pictures. So as the pictures go, what are your thoughts on that process as a whole, Kirk?
There's auctions everywhere, right? I think there's like 400 auto auctions across the United States, right? So, I mean, that'd probably be interesting to look at Mannheim plus Odessa plus the Independence plus E-Block plus ACV plus all these companies. If they're 150 to a Mannheim, how close are they to every other auction? It's probably 100 miles or whatever, right? So then what does it come down to is really it comes down to speed. So if you've got the ability to produce the car faster and offer it, that's the first step. And then the second thing is that if you can buy online or you're sending somebody to preview the car or whatnot, you trust the information, what it comes down to. So a part of it is kind of answering the image question is really the first, like what does a client care about, right? Is as they send the car, they want a CR, they want to make sure that it's accurate, right? So having the right verification steps in the process to make sure, okay, we did this, but the miles are accurate, the CR grade is accurate, all this information. So that's one thing that we're establishing, not only the speed of the process, but verification steps of the information that's put on the car so that we know that it's right. Same thing on the imaging is that we know that when the car exits the detail shop, we want to take high quality glamour type photos of the vehicle. We want to make sure that we're not missing one photo or whatever. Like all the photos that need to be taken on that car are taken and that there's a verification step there as well so that you've got the two primary things as that car is exiting to go to the sale line, everything's set, right? So that's even stuff that we're looking at. I mean, beyond just the imaging is the sale label cockeyed, is the promotional sticker in the right spot,
Wow.
are the tires aired up, right? Does it need a extra half a gallon of gas in it or whatnot, right? So that it gets, how many times I've heard it didn't make it through the block because it ran out of gas, right? I mean, basic little things that we can be setting ourselves up and verifying ahead of time so that when we get to the sale point where you've got that 30 seconds on the block to sell it, everything that we've done, we've checked every box to maximize the value for the buyer and the seller right on that spot, right? I would say that's a key component, is building in your processes verification, right, of what you're doing.
Oh yeah, dude. This is really good because I'm like, I think I'm not necessarily a nerd like you guys, but I feel like I'm a nerd, and it's like, okay, so you're talking about
You calling us
speed.
nerds?
Yeah, you said it first,
What do you do, Ty?
transport guy.
All right, just checking.
There was the speed part of it. Okay, so you guys did all your work. You did a great job. High five. Everybody got it from 12 days to a half a day. Pictures are great. CR is great. I can trust you guys. I'm going to buy it from you now. Hey, which, by the way, Rich, I did get you a buyer.
I saw that.
Anyway, so now this is where I love this part. Okay, I bought it. I got the gate pass at the guard check. I need it now, speed. Because now I floor planned it and it's costing me average. I heard this multiple times at the conference. Average nationwide, like $55 a day, $50 a day, $40 a day. Even if it's $25 a day, it's costing that dealer that much money a day to not have the car on his lot. So now we're looking at a different kind of speed, right?
Yep.
And I started thinking about how do transporters, how do carriers, how do whatever work with guys like you to help the dealer get his stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, one thing that would be interesting, I would love to do is spend a day with you, right? Let's go through your entire process. Let's get in a truck. Let's show up at a lot. Let's work through it. Again, there's going to be behavioral process things. Are we calling ahead? Do we know the load? There's probably basic information that we can know on the transporter side. Like, that's one thing I always like when you go into a process and you ask somebody like, hey, how can we improve this? A lot of times what happens is, well, it's Susie's fault. It's Fred's fault. You look outside, right? And what I always say is, hey, focusing on our process, what can we do to get our house in order? So as a transporter, that would be the question I'd ask you. What are the things that we can do outside of the auction that we could do to get our house a little bit better in order on the transportation side, to be more proactive or think about things ahead of time on how we're going to that site to get set up? And then once we get to that site, obviously every location might be a little bit different, but kind of having it mapped out a little bit. And then when we go to that site, obviously that there's best practices at the auction location that, some sites do it better than other locations. And I think that's a huge selling point for that location to, buyers that are picking up cars, right? If you buy from the site, it's going to take an extra 3 days or whatever to get your car out, or it's the transporter, they don't like dealing with them. So it's harder to get transporters to go to that site because they don't like dealing with them or whatever. So I think it's just a natural type thing that, as we've talked about this in the past, that where is the transportation lot? Where is it set up? What are the points of when we're clearing the lanes, we're marking solds, we're moving solds to the sold lot to make it easier for transporters, their walk time, where they're getting the car, how we're staging vehicles out in the sold lot. There's a lot of different factors that go into.
Yeah, there are processes and it is there. So there's the fundamentals, the foundation, I call it. You're going to go to the auction. You're going to have to get gate passes, and you're going to have to find your cars. The guaranteed those will happen.
To throw something out, if you buy a car from an auction, an independent auction, perhaps one like an E-Block or an E-Block Houston, right here in Houston, Texas, when you actually call the auction, you're going to talk to somebody that works at the auction, and they're going to know who you are. We take pride in that. We're probably going to be able to give you a gate pass, and we'll probably be able to help you find your car, maybe get you a bottle of water because it does get hot down here. We'll have a friendly smile on it. Or you can try to buy from somebody else, and I don't know who that'd be, and end up in the robo dial talking to somebody somewhere about getting a gate pass. But anyway, another podcast, another topic. But anyway, buy from independents, buy from an auction that Kirk's helped organize. There's some out there. If you want to know that list, get a hold of Kirk. Kirk, what's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Just give me a call, 678-662-2274, or just you can go to auctionexcellence.com and all information is there.
Or if you know me, hit me up, 712-358-1282. I can get you in contact with Kirk. And Ty, if you need a car moved?
Need a car moved, 417-483-2764.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Meet Me at the Gate. I hope the conversation has helped to fuel your drive and equip you with insights to steer your team towards success. Remember, the road to success is always under construction. And until next time, keep your engines revving and your gas tanks full.